Okay, so here we are with the Universal Audio 175 and 176. So I'll go through the controls here briefly. Let me just get the 175 up here. 175B. And I don't often use demos for my videos, but in this case I am, and then I'll give you my feeling about whether I'm going to buy this at the end, which might be interesting. So these are Universal Audio's emulations of some very old precursors to the 1176 created in the early 60s, all tube compressors. So before we go any further, if you can ring the bell and subscribe, press the like button, and if you can press the thanks button, that really helps the channel keep going and it's really appreciated. Okay, so let's get back to it. So this was the earlier one, and then this one followed on. It's got more controls, and they do sound different. So I'm going to just start really quickly, go over them. I'm not going to go into huge depth, but basically you've got the input here, which is driving the compression. So it's kind of like a threshold. It's a very move style, so the further you push this, the more the ratio goes up as the high. Well, the higher that you see the needle go here, the more the ratio increases as the input goes up, and this drives that. And you can click here, and it drives the whole thing harder and changes the harmonic content as well. This also changes the harmonic content. And this changes the compression characteristic, how the attack works, and probably how the release works as well. I'm not 100% sure about whether both, but see on plug-in Doctor, it definitely affects the attack or the recovery after the attack. But it probably does more than that. Now, obviously, we've got an attack and release controls here, mix control, output, which is just a clean output, stereo link or not, and this just decides whether or not these controls are sort of indented, I guess, like the original was, or free to move in between the dots. So all very straightforward. This one's the same, although the harmonics you get when you move these things around are not the same as this. I've looked in the plug-in Doctor, they're definitely different. And it's got a ratio control, so you've got a choice of ratios. And it doesn't have this low-high sort of input boost control that this one has. Kind of wish it did, actually, because I found this really useful. But nonetheless, it's not a big deal, and it's got all the other controls are the same. So let's start now with a kick drum. And I'm going to just open up the kick drum with one of these on it and just have a listen to what it can do. Start with the kick drum. I think I'll just solo the drum kit, leave everything else in there, and then we can have a listen to it without and then with. So you hear it really controls it, holds it in, and it preserves the attack. It's not a compressor that, because it's a soft knee compressor and very moo, it's not a compressor you're easily going to get like a really snappy kind of, there's some like a FET compressor, the later versions of these when they turn into the 1176, where if you push those hard and move the attack right, you can get a real kind of snap out of the attack and increase the attack quite dramatically. You're not going to get that so much with these. I'm not saying you can't get any of that, but it's not what they're particularly aimed at. So I've got the attack quite slow here, and it's letting the attack through, but also controlling and containing the whole thing. Let's try a different setting and see what that's like. I'm going to switch over to the B setting. So again, some increase in the attack, but it's really pulled the body of it in. I'm going to go back over to this one again and play around with some of the controls just so you can hear what it's like. And now I'm just going to solo up, I think I will solo up just the kick drum so you can hear a little bit more in detail here. So a healthy amount of distortion going on there. I did forget to mention that if you click here, it turns off the compressor and you just get the saturation that this compressor can do, the distortion, and you can drive it all with these and get loads of distortion without any compression if you want. So you can pretty much transform the sound of the kick drum. Very good at kind of pulling it all in, especially like pulling in the sustain, or if you want, you can kind of pull out the sustain, but it's very much a different thing. It's more like pulling out the low-level information of the tone of the drum is what I'm hearing when you make the release faster. But it's also, without it, you're getting a little bit more kind of, I find, weight to the kick drum. But if that's not what you're after and you want something with a bit more tone, this could be really nice, and it kind of pulls in the sound nicely. So let's move over to snare, and I think I go back to the whole kit again here, just because the snare in this kind of music is never going to be heard on its own. It's always going to be heard with the overheads, which add quite a lot to it. So I think it's worth hearing in that context. So I'm going to open up this one here, and let's have a listen without and then with. So I switched over to a B setting with basically more, what is the difference here? Yeah, different attack and release. So I'm going to just flip between these two so you can see what it's like with different attack and release. So it's bringing out a lot of the lower thickness of the sound of the snare in a way that is really nice. Can't think of another compressor that really does that. So it's quite a gentle compression, but it's definitely bringing up tone and low-level information in a nice way without it sounding like you're doing a huge amount to the snare. So it doesn't sound super compressed, and yet it's changing the sound fairly significantly. It's very much like a tonal effect as opposed to really changing the volume envelope or the transient of the snare. So now I'm going to mess around a bit more with the controls and you can see what it's like. So really nicely bringing out the low-level information, really nicely bringing out those ghost hits, the rolls, the intricate rolls and things, and bringing it up closer to the level of the harder hits, meaning that in a dense mix like this is, you're going to be able to hear those a lot better. And really bringing up a nice tone. I'm really liking the sound of this a lot on the snare. I could definitely imagine using this on a snare, this kind of a snare. It still sounds natural. So it's bringing out a lot of tone and a lot of detail without it sounding like I'm really slamming compression on it, and yet it's at 8 to 1 because it's very moo, it's very gentle. So yeah, I like the sound of that. Let's jump over now to, I'm going to take that out and move over to the drum bus and bring up this one for the drum bus. And let's have a listen to this without and then with. I'm really liking the sound of that, I have to say. It just has a really lovely tonal character to it. It's pumping a tiny bit on the cymbals, but I mean that could easily be fixed by slowing the release down a bit. Keep in mind that with these compressors, just like this at 1176, the higher the number goes, the faster the attack is. So that's quite a fast release and quite a slow attack. They go the opposite way around to most modern compressors. So, you know, if I slowed that down, I could reduce that pumping, or I could pull down the mix a bit. But it's sounding really nice to me. It's so nice that I'd almost kind of leave a little bit of the pumping in there, just because it sounds so nice. But I probably wouldn't in the end. But it depends on the style of music. With this music, I wouldn't want that. But with some styles of music, something a little bit more rocky, it might really sound nice. So yeah, and this is at 2 to 1. Really nice on the bus compression, I think. I'm impressed by this. Let's move to another preset that I made and see what that's like on the B here. These are like little memory things, as you often get. Let's move over to this one. So this is absolutely slamming it with a parallel mix. So the idea here is to just bring in a little bit of that. So I'm just going to pull this out and then bring a little bit in. So definitely adding some of that room tone excitement that you can get using this common technique of crushing and adding a little bit into the parallel mix. Does it nicely. You know, yeah, a way that doesn't remind me of any other compressor. So yeah, that's nice. So let's move on now to the bass. So I'm going to solo up the bass here. And on this one, I'm going to try both of these because I found that on the drums, I needed the control of the ratio to get what I was after, whereas with the bass, that's not necessarily going to be the case. So I'm going to start with this one here, with the 175B, and start with that and then bring it in. Just by the way, there's quite a bit of leak from the piano here, just so that you know, but such is the way with a lot of recordings, acoustic recordings. Now that is sounding really great to me. I'm pushing it probably harder than I maybe actually would, but I often do that. As you know, if you watch my other videos, I often push things a bit harder than I would, just so that you can hear more obviously what's going on and the quality of the whatever the plugin is. And I'm doing that in this case, but I actually think it sounds nice, push that hard. It's really bringing out the tone of it. It's sounding really kind of rich and warm in the low end with it in as compared to it out, and you're hearing more of the kind of fingerboard sound, and the kind of percussive element of it is really nice, and it's coming out in a very kind of polished, kind of expensive sounding way. So very impressed with that. I mean, there's other compressors I can do this with, but I can't say any of them sound the same as this one. It does sound really, really nice, I have to say. So let's move over to the 176 and have a listen to that one. Start with it out and then bring it in. Very nice. So I'm going to try this in the mix so you can hear the difference. I'm going to start with it out and then bring it in. have to say, these sound great. These sound really, really good. I mean, without being in the mix, I thought this one sounded kind of as good, but in this context of the mix, I prefer this one. It's just so rich and warm down at the bottom end, like you want an acoustic bass to be, but not losing any of the definition that you want. So, yeah, I have to say, super impressed by the sound of these. They do sound very much like hardware. So let's move over now to the piano, and then we'll do that, and then we'll listen to it on the as a mix bus sort of mastering chain thing. So let's move over to the piano, and I'm going to same thing in and then back out. And I'm going to do this, I think, in the context of the mix, or maybe I'll solo up the piano. Now that's just so smooth and nice. I'm not saying you'd necessarily want to compress it as much as this, but the quality of the smooth lushness of it is very appealing to me. I'm going to bring this back into the mix again and listen to the difference. To me, what I was going for with this is to make the piano a little bit more glued and smooth. It was sounding a little bit harsh and thin, and I was going after something that kind of helped that. So start with it out and then bring it in. Wow, what a difference. It goes from sounding really small by comparison to sounding really big and lush and kind of gelled into the fabric of the mix, and yet you're hearing all the details just as much. Pull it out and it just sounds kind of really small and kind of lost by comparison. So yeah, very impressed by this. Sounds really good. Let's move over finally to the mix bus, and I've got, again, both of them on this. I'm going to start with the 175B without, and then bringing it in. So this is doing an amazing job of gluing this together and controlling the dynamics in a kind of gentle, gluey kind of way, and just giving it a really nice gloss, expensive sounding gloss. So yeah, really quite impressed with this. I mean, it's maybe a bit too much all the way up. I might pull the mix down a bit, but just to give you an idea of the kind of tonal quality of it. Super nice. So let's move over now to this one. What I'm really liking here, apart from the fact that it's got the same kind of gluey effect as the other one, is that the kick drum and the bass are really punching. They're really pulling together and driving harder, which is great for this track. And yet it's quite a subtle compression. So it's not causing a huge change to the sound, and it's only 2-to-1, but really really a nice rhythmic accentuation there. Really love that. I think I've got another preset here. I'm just going to try that and see if it is one that I set up. Let's have a listen. Sounds nice, even this other variation. I like the other one better, but nonetheless. What I'd love to see on these, I think this is really, in general, the controls and all that are really, really great. And they stuck pretty faithfully to the original, is my understanding. Not that I have ever used one of these, but I'm not getting, this is not going loud enough. So, you know, if I drive it quite hard here and I pull this down enough so that I'm getting the right amount of compression, I mean, say that, I'm giving it probably more than I would. But I'm not able to get it up to a matched level here. And I think it would be really good if they could add, you know, another little level control that goes past what I guess the hardware would have done. Because I've hit that before. I'm often finding myself like way up here somewhere. Depending on the setting, and in this case I've actually run out and I can't level match. So I would suggest that would be a very minor change, but you know, I'm being nitpicky because in general it's great. I'm just going to jump back one more time over to this before we finish. Yeah, really, really nice tonal quality to it. Again, I've just about run out of space here for sort of subtle use as I'm using it here. So it would be nice to have that. And, you know, it would be, I think it'd be quite nice to have a sidechain filter as well. You could set that up, you know, manually, but it's a bit of a palaver. So it would be really nice to, in fact, I'm not sure if you'd get the timing right doing it that way, doing some kind of parallel sidechain thing. You might run into timing issues with that. So it would be really good to have a sidechain filter, even though it's not in the original. Not that it really matters, because they just sound fantastic as they are. But yeah, I have to say I am very impressed with these. The sound of them, just the tonal quality of them, really. So I will be getting these. I will definitely be buying this set. They come together. So I hope you found this useful. If you did, please do give the video a like and subscribe and ring the bell. And if you can press the thanks button, that really helps the channel keep going and is really appreciated. And hope to see you next time.